Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema. Sit down. You see what's up on the screen. You know what we are getting ready to talk about. But before I get there, I want to proactively apologize for the background noise you will probably be hearing throughout all of this video and anything else that I recorded today. As you can hear, there is a giant jackhammer attached to one of those like big construction vehicles that got like a crane arm to do the scooping, but you take the scooper off and you put a jackhammer and you get that sound. And I've been getting that sound literally every day except weekends from 9, sometimes earlier, till about 5. Every day. It is miserable. So trust me, I hate it as much as you guys, but hopefully it won't distract too much from what we're about to talk to, which as you can see is already up on the screen. So if you don't know, why don't you pull up a chair? Take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in spoiler-filled into Marvel Studios' What If? Episode 3, What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes? And I gotta say, before we dive into anything, this is gonna be spoiler-filled. So if you don't want the spoilers, you just, maybe you haven't gotten a chance to watch the episode yet, you just want what did this episode make you feel, C-Man? If you want all that information that's on that non-spoiler side, boom, go check out the non-spoiler review, watch the episode, come back and enjoy all the spoiler talk we're about to have, which, I tell you, it's going to be right at the top, because this week's episode, while it was a bit of a step back, it felt more in tune to that Captain Carter episode than the T'Challa episode. As you know, if you follow me, the T'Challa episode for me was like the epitome of what you can do with What If. Like, if you change one thing, how big and drastic a change to the overall story could you get? Captain Carter was there were some big key changes to the first Avengers story, but it was the first Avengers story. Now, this isn't one particular story, but we do get to go to 3 Marvel stories that we are familiar with that feature Iron Man, the Hulk, and Thor, rather. We get a tease for Captain America toward the end, so I guess there'd be 4 things that we're familiar with in places that we go to. But in this episode, you see Nick Fury bouncing around, setting up his Avengers initiative. However, the genius of A.C. Bradley and the success of this show, I so firmly believe, just rests on this guy's shoulders. Like, the way in which Bradley understands the MCU and understands that if you change this, all the things that would fall in the domino line, or if you change this, all the things that would then fall into place. He really has a firm grasp of that. And taking the idea of, what if we wiped out all the Avengers before they became the Avengers? Then what? What would happen? We don't exactly know what would happen yet. If we go back to the story, I think we might find out more. But he does craft a really interesting mystery that takes us to places that we're familiar with and that, really keeps us on our toes. It wasn't until the end of the episode where, they have said hope 5 or 6 times where it finally triggered, Hope Van Dyne. Oh, duh, Ant-Man is freaking behind all of this. And you bring in Michael Douglas to play Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, who's actually wearing the Yellow Jacket armor, which was freaking so cool to see, man. It was one of these things where, you found a story and a mystery that made sense. If Hope worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hope died, Ant-Man, if you know Hank Pym would hold a massive grudge, even though it comes with the job. He's the guy that would hold the grudge against Nick Fury and then figure out a way to try to take him down. And to watch that unfold was a lot of fun. It wasn't, the biggest, most insane story that we could get, but A.C. Bradley nails everything on the writing side. And how he just lays everything out. Watching it the second time, you could see, the Ant-Man concepts of him being the big bad in this episode. They were there right from the start, man, and they're just, a good mystery. Everything is in plain sight if you know what you're looking for. And I thought Bradley crushed all of that stuff. The other thing that I didn't really talk about at all in the non-spoiler that I want to get to before we rip through the episode top to bottom is this is the most diverse voice cast we've had as far as returning MCU actors and new voice talent. And what's crazy is you watch this episode, and this is what I was saying about T'Challa last week. You could recast T'Challa from a voice perspective on the side of animation. He'll still look like Chad Boseman because that's the character design that they've gone with. But you could get someone else that could do a voice close enough to Chad Boseman's that it would feel like T'Challa. And that happens with multiple characters in this episode. Massive shout out to Lake Bell. I've been rewatching Harley Quinn. Love her as Poison Ivy. She's so freaking good. But she comes in here and delivers a Natasha Romanoff performance that, if I didn't tell you it was Lake Bell, you would assume that it's Scarlett Johansson. Like, she absolutely crushes this week. But she's not the only one. Now, we only get a little time with Mick Wingert, but he comes in to voice Tony Stark and very much sounds in tune to what we know the MCU Tony Stark to sound like, which is Robert Downey Jr. I thought he did a phenomenal job with that stuff. Stephanie Panisello does a wonderful Liv Tyler impersonation as she plays Betty Ross in this episode. Like I said, we've got some Hulk things going on, and it was one of those, like, the animation again lines up with what we know from the MCU. Outside of the Hulk changing in this story, we would have had Ed Norton, but we have Mark Ruffalo. So that's the only change to, like, a physical appearance, because Mark Ruffalo is Hulk now. But, you know, you get Betty Ross looking like the Betty Ross we know, man. She's got all the Liv Tyler features, and Stephanie Panisello does a really wonderful job of hitting that Liv Tyler. Like, Liv Tyler has a very unique sounding voice, and I thought Panisello did a wonderful job of getting into the general zone, as does Mike McGill, who steps in for General Ross, who, of course, we all know has been, you know, performed by William Hurt. That one I was a little surprised by. Like, we keep pulling William Hurt out of, like, the blue and throwing him into live action movies. I was kind of surprised we didn't get his voice, but Mike McGill crushes here. You also have one other non-main actor doing voice work here, Alexandra Daniels, who comes in only for like a couple lines right at the end, but she's pulling the Carol Danvers. And if you're watching the episode and you don't know that it's Alexandra Daniels, you might think that it's Brie Larson. Like, all of the voice talent that's come in to step into the shoes of actors that, you know, either weren't asked to come back, had contract obligations that couldn't come back, maybe had conflicts that couldn't come back. Whatever the reason for certain people not being involved here, the folks that have stepped into those shoes have absolutely crushed it. And this episode, you really get to see it because, unlike the first two, where there's only like one, maybe two people in the episode that were changed, you got a whole handful of people here, and I just thought that the voice work top to bottom in this episode was phenomenal. And that's really all I gotta say from a spoiler overall standpoint. The animation continues to crush. I love the way that they paint Uatu into the backgrounds. We got the most scenic shots with Uatu in it. I think we had 2 in the episode, maybe 3. But just like the animation styles, whether it's the fighting or like in this one, you get like some really wonderful like still images depicting certain iconic moments from the MCU that like you literally could just freeze frame, print out, and I would put them up on my wall. And like it's just so good. And again, so much of the uniqueness to the animation style is the way that they play with lighting and how lighting hits these characters and lights them, lights the backgrounds. And in this episode, as I said on my non-spoiler, probably the brightest of the 3 episodes. So you really got to see like this animation pop. But if you really want to know what I was thinking or feeling watching this episode, which included a lot of laughs. Oh man, Mr. Clark Gregg comes in here as Agent Coulson and is just like made me laugh my ass off the whole episode, whether it was serious moments or not. Like, he was bringing all the wonderful, comic beats, and it was so nice to hear Clark Gregg. It's one of those things. I've always hated that Agent Coulson's never come back into the movies, so to be able to utilize Gregg here, I thought was wonderful. But whether it was, laughing or just being surprised, I mean, when they start killing Avengers, like the title tells you that the Avengers are going to get wiped out, but you do not see how it is coming. And when it hits, especially the first one, oh man, there's some reactions for you. So let's throw it back to the past Seaman from early this morning and take a look at how I reacted watching What If, Episode 3.
He's dead.
What? Humanity. So eager. He's a Caucasian male, mid-20s with really great hair.
Excuse me? It's an accurate description. Sir, he's gorgeous. I need eyes in the sky. Martin, already on it.
Oh, I missed him.
Making me move on the... Wilson wasn't lying about the hair. Nice.
Oh, shoot.
Damn it, Martin. I told you to stand down. I did. Martin, Coulson, get him in. How could this... Who did you let in here? Well, no one. Stay with me. Stay with me. But I also have a space corpse that looks like a Chippendale's dancer riding on the next table.
Wow. Even while rotting, he smells like lavender.
Really?
Still, there's not a lot connected.
Love the freaking landscapes where he pops in. Uatu.
Whatever it is, it came with bogeys.
Oh, no.
Crown Prince of Asgard, the rightful king of Jotunheim, and god of mischief. Are you gonna take that? I'm in the middle of...
What? Is he gonna explode? Oh no!
No, Bruce. But he can't die. He can't die.
Hashtag Steve. I heart Steve. 704.
Wow. Good one, Coulson.
What?
No, nothing. That's good. Thank you. Not against S.H.I.E.L.D.
They're invisible? Who's killing all of the future Avengers?
Is that a beeper? From the 90s?
Oh, Marvel.
Also, our
The balls you have to come here and stand over her grave.
Oh, don't worry about her. I doubt she'd mind, considering she's dead.
She died because S.H.I.E.L.D. killed her. I wanted you to hurt. To witness everything you ever worked for. Fought for. Hope for. Die.
And what of Thor, Prince of Asgard?
Yo.
How are you,
Oh, it's Loki.
Lights are everywhere.
It's Johnny Loki.
Welcome back, Captain.
So, where's the fight?
Oh. I hope you guys enjoyed my reactions more than I am enjoying the jackhammer and going on outside. I swear, it's so bad today. Like, it's worse than it's normally been. But, nevertheless, we will persevere through. And now that you've seen how I reacted to the episode, it's time to break this bad boy down top to bottom and go through all the things that popped out for me, that caught me, that surprised me, that just kept me engaged as I went through this episode. And we start off, and I love the fact that Bradley sets this in a 5-day period. And we start, like, the episode, boom, Monday. And I love every time the days come up, you get, like, the same kind of score and, like, boom, like, it hits you with, like, a thud. Like, oh, man, it's a new day. What terrible things are going to happen today? We start out with Monday, and you got Sam L. Jackson as Nick Fury in the car with Natasha, and he's starting to do the speech. Like, the speech that he gives Tony Stark. He's, starting to say it to Nat, and Nat's like, I've heard the speech. And he's like, well, then you know what we're up to. And again, I cannot get over how well Lake Bell does ScarJo as Natasha. Like, it's so good. And just so natural sounding. But we go, we pull up and we see that they're going to, talk to Iron Man. He's up in the donut, just sitting, chilling, the way that we've seen him, in the actual MCU movies. And we go down into the donut shop. Fury is talking to him, and much like Iron Man 2, the blood, poisoning is starting to creep up his neck. And Natasha comes in, hits him in the neck with the injector that has the antidote, or not the antidote, but has the serum that'll at least combat it enough for Tony to figure out how to get rid, how to change his arc reactor so that this doesn't happen to him, right? And as she hits him in the neck, he's like, hey, what in the world? Like, what are you doing? She's like, don't worry, this is going to help you. It won't cure you, but it'll help you. And, like, you're waiting to see the lines start coming down his neck, and instead Tony just slumps over in the Iron Man outfit, dead. Like, dead. And I was like, oh, that's how we gonna do it. Okay. But immediately, that, like, Natasha has no reason to kill Tony Stark. And while I guess, this is a what if, so maybe the Nat here could be a double agent. That was actually something that never crossed my mind. Like, I was very much in tune to the fact that, like, it felt like Natasha was the Natasha that we know, just in a circumstance that we don't. So right away, you jump from that to, you see Uatu kind of set everything up for the episode. Unlike the last two where he pinpointed the exact moment that things changed, we get to watch it this time, and then he kind of tees up, what happens when you bring a bunch of heroes together, and you get to see these wonderful still frames of, like, the Hulk in action, and Iron Man taking on Whiplash from Iron Man 2, and, like, you're getting all these pieces of the movies that we're going to visit. And, at the end, you get to see, like, the full... They don't do the 360 circle, but you see the full team in a still from, the Battle of New York as the Avengers. And then, Uatu's like, well, that was in a different universe. What would happen here? And we dive into now Tuesday comes up, and you've got... Coulson has found Mjolnir. That's where we're at. And... they're kind of getting everything set up in the perimeter the way that we've seen it in the movies. And then we jump to Fury, who is escorting, along with Frank Grillo's Crossbones and a whole bunch of other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, Natasha, to a transport van to go be taken to some sort of prison. And you're like, wow, like, right out the gate, like, things are definitely different. And, Nat kind of says something to Fury, like, that I'm not behind this. He's like, I know, but I need somebody to get out to figure out what happened. And he gives Nat the injector that killed Tony. And he's like, you go and find somebody that can figure out what killed Tony utilizing this so that we can figure out how this happened, because I know it's not you or me. And then, he kind of, like, shutters off, and they put her into the back. And you see, it's like 6 or 7, maybe 8 dudes in the back of this transport with Natasha. You got a driver, and then Frank Grillo's Crossbones is up in the front seat. And I keep saying Frank Grillo, and I'll say that for all the names of people who do voice themselves, because he voices himself here. So nice to always see Grillo pop back up into the MCU. He's a character I would have liked to have gotten to spend some more time with. I enjoy Frank Grillo quite a bit. But anyway, as they're kind of going off, Nat is trying to make small talk, and she gets to a point where she's like, these are really uncomfortable. Can you hold these for me? And the guy next to her's like, sure. He's like, wait, what? And then Nat just proceeds to take out everybody. And it's like one of these things where even in animation, like, close quarters tight combat looks so good, and they animate it really, really well. And what's great is as she's kind of running through all of the guys in this back, you then swing to the front, you see the driver and Grillo, and they're kind of chatting, and all of a sudden you kind of feel it, like the car shakes. You hear a couple bangs, and Grillo's like, oh no, pull the car over. And by the time he pulls the car over, gets to the back and opens up the doors, Natasha is gone. But a wonderful little open action sequence from Natasha. Like I said, it was a lot of fun. To kind of see that play out in that kind of tight space through animation. And then we jump forward in the day to, it's now the middle of the night, and Thor has come into the base camp they've set up around Mjolnir to try to take it back. And what's fun with this whole sequence, and again, is something that I really enjoy from Bradley, is that he captures the sequence perfectly. Like, you see things, you feel things, you hear things that all line up with that moment from Thor. But we're seeing it from a different perspective. We've been riding shotgun with, Nick Fury and Agent Coulson and S.H.I.E.L.D. So that's where we're seeing it from. So you have Coulson and S.H.I.E.L.D., and Fury are talking, and you just see like boom, people getting knocked out, getting pulled over. And as you're kind of moving through, it's Greg that kind of raises the alarm. Like, I found someone unconscious. We've got a perimeter breach. And as they're kind of figuring it out, he gets eyes on Thor. And this was the first, like, legitimate laugh out loud moment for me, where Coulson is like, I've got eyes on the target, Caucasian male, mid-20s. And as he's saying mid-20s, like, Thor has done something and kind of done one of these. And there's this just massive bolt of lightning that lights him up beautifully, and he looks like a freaking god on the screen. And Coulson goes, with really great hair. Like, and I think Fury says something, he's like, no, like, true story, like, he is gorgeous. And that becomes a little bit of a running joke for this section, that just absolutely wonderful, to the point where, like, now you've got Hawkeye up in the bird's nest, he's drawing his arrow, and he's like, I've got eyes on him. And he goes, he's like, Coulson wasn't lying. His hair is gorgeous. As someone who now has hair that, you know, a lot of people continually just like say, hey man, you got like really nice hair. Nothing that I knew about before. I've been a short hair guy my whole life. But now as someone who has hair, I appreciated this scene in a way different kind of way. But anyway, you've got Hawkeye up there and he's lined up. And Fury's telling him, hold, just like he does in the movie. Don't do anything. I want to see what he does. You know, and you're getting ready to see Thor, the most emotional moment, probably the pivotal moment of that entire movie, maybe of the entire Thor arc in the MCU. Him trying to pull that hammer and not being able to because he's not worthy yet. And right as he's about to, there's like a flash of lightning and Barton releases the bow. And arrow shoots and Clint doesn't ever miss. Dead bullseye to the heart. Thor is dead immediately because he is not a god. He is a human at this point in the story. And you're just like, but why? Like, what? Like, come on, Barton. Like, lightning? Like, that was the thing that, like, Bradley did a really good job of staging the kills and the story in a way where it was like, you're never thinking Ant-Man or Hank Pym at all. And like I said, when you go back and rewatch, it's like, as everything happens, you're like, oh man, it was so obvious, like, the whole time. But you honestly think that the thunder lightning is what made him kind of slip, and the quiver goes, off goes the arrow, Thor is dead. Which, much like Natasha, leads Barton to be put into jail because, or at least a holding cell at this base, because it looks like he killed Thor cold-blooded. You know, I love that we see from that moment when we see him in the cell, like, Barton is a complete wreck. Like, he is just talking to himself, and Jeremy Renner is back doing the voice. And, you know, he's just like, I never miss. Like, I don't slip. I don't make mistakes. Like, that's not what I do. Like, he doesn't understand how it happened. And, you know, it's like one of those, like, Coulson is talking with Fury, and they're like, you know, Barton won't talk to anybody. And Fury's like, Barton will talk to me. And he goes in there, and he, like, says, you know, like, Clint or something like that, and nothing happens, and he flips him over, and Clint is dead. And you're like, how? He's been in a cell. There is nobody there. Like, how did he die? And, like, you know, Coulson's like, maybe it was a cyanide capsule. And Fury's like, guy has a family. Like, he's not going out willingly. Like, like, if you know Clint, that's not what's going to happen. There is something afoot here. So they go, you know, we jump to, like, the autopsy room, and, you know, they're in front of Clint, and they're talking about what's going on. That's where this conversation with the cyanide capsule takes place. And then as Fury is kind of talking whatever, Coulson goes over to Thor, and he's like, even decaying, he smells like lavender. And you then see Fury go, like, we're in a really dark Avengers place, and, like, Agent Coulson just dropping all the laugh out loud funny lines. I loved every second of it. And as we end on that really dark humor beat, boom, Wednesday comes up, and we are now at the university that we know from The Incredible Hulk, where he shows up trying to get to Betty, try to figure all this stuff out. And this time, again, we are taking it from the perspective of someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. Natasha gets there. She comes in and runs into Betty right away. And Betty's like, hey, or Natasha's like, you know, Betty, I'm here to talk to you. And she's like, I'm going to tell you exactly what I told the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. I don't know where he is, but y'all just need to leave him be. And she's like, I'm not here for the big green guy. She's like, I'm here for you, like, or like Tony Stark was killed, and like, you are a specialist in a field that could tell us how it happened. So she's like, fine, I'll help you, but then you gotta go. So they go in, And like I said, both Stephanie Panicello and Mike McGill do great jobs as Betty and Thunderbolt Ross. So, we jump, inside of Betty's office. She's got the microscope. She's looking at it. She's like, well, I can tell you this much. Whatever was in here was not what killed Stark. She's like, your antidote, or your, I think she says antidote. We all know it wasn't an antidote. It was like serum. She's like, your antidote never even left. It looks like, and they close in on the needle, and the needle looks like it's kind of been blown out. And she's like, it looks like a projectile was fired from the inside. So now as a viewer, you're sitting there going, shoot, like somebody on the inside of S.H.I.E.L.D., like, created, something that should have injected something, instead, like, shot, like, like some sort of projectile out. And, that's the cool thing with the show, right? Is, like, you have that moment, but then you're still moving, and then other things are coming, so you kind of, it starts to fade to the back of your head, but, like, the way Stark dies, it doesn't look like he's been shot by anything, like he just kind of gets woozy after like a few seconds and then just slumps over. But there's no explosion, there's no blood, which granted I don't think we'd get blood anyway, but like it's one of those where if you were thinking about it logically, you'd be like, but there was no bang, there was no, like nothing felt like it was shot out, which again would have probably led you down a path that would have gotten you to Ant-Man. But nevertheless, once she's figured this out, like, yeah, it was somebody hijacked it. Like, you've got to figure out, who could have gotten to this thing, and that's where you'll find your person. And then Nat, is like on her way out the door because Betty's like, you got to go, because obviously Betty knows that Bruce is hiding in the closet. And as Nat is walking out, she sees the Stanley's Pizza hat and jacket, which of course we know Ed Norton threw on to impersonate a pizza delivery person to get back into the school, because he was on the run. So immediately, like, she knows what's going on, and as, like, Betty is trying to stop her from going, and that's getting closer, Bruce is just like, probably not the best idea to stick, like, I would leave. And, like, he's hiding in the closet, and of course it is Mark Ruffalo. And right as all of that is kind of transpiring, Fury calls Nat, and he's like, are you in a secure location or whatever? And she's like, not really at the moment. He's like, Barton's dead. And I know how close you were to him, so I had to let you know. And I love how she responds. Cold, just here. Who do I have to, like, who do I kill? Just tell me, point me in the direction of who I gotta kill. Like, who killed Clint? And from that moment, Fury kind of updated. He's like, whoever it is, they are taking out the Avenger Initiative. Like, they all have something in common. They were candidates for the Avengers Initiative. And that just leaves Banner and you. And there's a point where, like, Natasha responds, like, under normal circumstances, I would be flattered that both me and Clint would also be flattered that, like, we are a part of this Avengers Initiative group, because they're normies. They don't have superpowers or superpowered suits. Like, one guy is really good at shooting bow and arrows, and she's just a really, really good spy. But so I loved, like, where she was like, under normal circumstances, I would be flattered, and so would Barton. But let's go take care of business. And then we get that first beautiful kind of landscape shot where you're seeing Coulson head back to the base, and you got just Uatu up in the sky, man. Like, I love every time they paint him in. He looks so cool. And the way in which they do it, it's like almost in a way where, like, you're kind of using negative space in some spots, and there's other things that are obviously, like, drawing him in. Very similar to what they do here. I just love it every time. But you got, Coulson's driving in, and, I think he's on the phone with Fury, following Fury's combo with Nat. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm almost there. I had to stop to get coffee. He's like, I got your latte just the way you like it. And as he's about to hang up, everything in his car starts floating. And you're like, what? And he slams on the brakes, and you see a Bifrost beam hit the ground. And you're like, uh-oh. That's not going to be good, because it's not Thor. And Fury's immediately like, what's going on? He's like, there's some sort of unnatural event happening out here right now. And then as the Bifrost kind of dissipates, you see Loki, and you see an army. And Coulson is just like, we're probably in some trouble right now. And immediately, like, you get another wide shot where you're able to see how close to the base he was and how far away he is from Loki. I just see a bunch of other black SUVs come pulling out, and he's just like, go get him, boss. And, you know, they kind of run in to go confront Loki. And then we jump back to the university right as, you know, Ross and co are showing up. And Nat's like, well, if you were going to do something, like, now'd be a good time, because that looks like trouble. And that leads us right to the sequence where he's in that walkway, except this time, both him and Nat are in the walkway together. And Betty, I guess Betty might be up in there, too. So while they're kind of up in the walkway and Ross's people are coming, Nat tries to call Fury back to try to, you know, give him some more intel. And at this point, Fury is now talking to Loki, who's doing the whole, like, we've come for the son of Asgard, you know, Odin's son is here, we know that, like, you guys, like, he's dead because of you guys, so we're here to avenge, and, like, Fury's trying to, like, keep the peace, and his phone goes off and interrupts Loki in the middle of his, like, I'm gonna be the ruler of Earth speech. And, you know, he just kind of, like, lets it go. I think they then pop back over, you know, to Nat, and she calls again, and this time you hear Fury pick up, and it's like, Nat is really not a good time right now. And she's like, well, Ross is here coming after Hulk. I don't know what to do. Like, what do you think the best move is? And it's basically like, let Hulk go do Hulk things. Like, he's Hulk. So that's exactly what happens with Nat and Hulk. Back with Fury and, you know, Loki. Fury's about to, like, try to, like, talk some sense into him, and now Loki's got that giant frost giant, like, ice box, and he just starts laying waste to everything. And what I loved here is that they synced up both scenes simultaneously, so you go back and forth, and as, like, Loki is freezing everything, Hulk is starting to turn into Hulk, he jumps through the glass, goes down, and just starts wreaking havoc on the ground, right? Like, Nat jumps out. She's hiding, like, behind one truck. He's throwing trucks around, you know, destroying things. And then you just get to this moment where, like, Ross comes up to him with just one handgun and just starts shooting him. And Betty goes for him, and Nat tackles Betty to knock her out of the way because, like, it's not going to help. And as Ross's gun, like, empties, he's like, oh, shoot. And there's a couple other guys, and all of a sudden you just see this weird look on Hulk's face. And he starts hulking up more. And you're like, well, that's not normal. And it starts to look like he is ballooning. And you're like, oh my, no. They're not. They're not gonna. They did. They blew up the Hulk. Like, indestructible. Nothing can penetrate him when he's the Hulk. But from the inside, poof, just explodes. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, how did that happen? Like, who is getting to these Avengers? And again, I absolutely love the Ant-Man reveal when we get there. But like at this point, you just don't know what's going on. And then we jump back to Fury, who's been on the ground, and now Loki is finally stopping. He's like, starting a war with us is not going to bring your brother back. And like Loki's like gearing up to use it again, and Lady Sif puts her hands on. And sure enough, Jamie Alexander voicing here. You know, she goes, he might have a point, Loki. Like, that's not gonna bring Thor back. Like, maybe we should just listen and have a dialogue. And basically Fury's like, look, I'm not your enemy. Your enemy is my enemy. Like, we're after the same person. So why don't we make some kind of an agreement and team up to go take this guy down? Because whoever you're looking for is the guy who's killing all the people that are associated with me that I'm looking for. He's like, and I promise you, when we find him, you'll have your pound of flesh. And I love that Loki immediately is just, it was almost like a Drax moment where he's like, interesting choice of words, but I'm going to need the entire corpse. And Fury's like, I need time. And Loki looks and he sees the sun is setting, so he's like, all right, you have till Midgard's sun rises again. So you've got basically like 12 hours to figure all this stuff out. So then we jump back to Nat, who is now at one of the libraries, big libraries in Virginia, and she's looking stuff up. You know, she's doing some work or whatever, and she's talking to Coulson on the phone because she's been locked out of S.H.I.E.L.D. She's on the run. She's, you know, her codes don't work, but the only way that she's going to figure out what is going on is if she can access S.H.I.E.L.D.'s, like, database. And Coulson's just like, I'm not giving you my password. And you're like, is Coulson doing it because he's trying to keep his password secure, or is Coulson doing it because his password is probably like Captain America fanboy stuff? And eventually Nat twists his arm to tell it, and he's like, alright, fine. It's hashtag Steve, I heart Steve 0704. Died. I died. So like as it was building up, you're like, it's gotta be something Captain America related. I never in a million years would have guessed that, and it was so perfect for Coulson. Absolutely loved it. But that allows Nat to get in, and as she's starting to do something, she's like, why would a dead someone who's been dead for 2 months be accessing the systems? And she's starting to piece it together. And right as she figures it out, she hears a sound, and she's like, she basically like just confronts him, like, she's like, I know you're there. You're not gonna stop me. Like, you're not going to take me down. And she spins, and the room is empty. And again, this is one of those moments where, like, should have been thinking Ant-Man. Gotta be Ant-Man or Wasp, like one of the two. But no, instead, I've been watching a lot of horror movies. I just went to go see The Night House last night, which is really, really solid ghost movie. I'll be reviewing that later. But like, it was one of these, like, oh man, like, we know zombie Avengers are coming. Like, is there some sort of, like, abnormal apparition or, like, something else? And kicks the crap out of Nat to the point that, like, this apparition kills Nat. But before that can happen, she had started to call Fury. So when she gets hit the first time, she drops the phone, and she just starts yelling, like, hope is the answer. It's all hope, like, hope is everything here. You know, because of the way that she's struggling, when she's saying hope, it sounded kind of like Hulk. So, like, even right here, where I should have been putting together, I wasn't thinking Ant-Man yet. And then we jump to back to the donut shop, and Fury's there. Coulson comes in, and he's like, sir, you know, we only got like 4 hours till sunup. And he's like, I know. He's like, also, like, the Avengers list is not done. He's like, there's still one Avenger left. And he puts down a piece of paper, and it says Nick Fury on it. Like, the head of the Avengers initiative. You're technically still an Avenger. Like, this guy could theoretically be coming after you. And it's at this point that, like, you know, Fury is listening to Nat's message. And he's like, well, we're not out yet. And he goes back to his car, and he opens up his glove box, and there's the beeper for Captain Marvel. And he's like, it's all about, he's like, we got one last hope. And he stops, and he goes, hope. It's all about hope. And he shuts it. And you're like, oh man, like, one great nod to how they introduced Captain Marvel to us in the MCU and how she was the last hope at the time. But when he says hope like 3 times in a row, that was when it finally clicked, and you're like, Hope Van Dyne. Oh man, like, this could be Ant-Man related. But even then, you're not thinking that it's Hank Pym. Even though, like I said at the top, Hank Pym certainly makes the most sense. So, you know, Fury goes to where Loki's at, and Loki has created, like, this kind of, like, frost castle, or at least I think it was, like, a frost castle. It seemed icy outside, but the giant robot that shoots the fire out his eyes is up front. He's like, I'm here to talk to Loki. And you're like, okay, we're going to see whatever the plan is. And instead, boom, Thursday. And we are now in a very foggy cemetery in San Francisco, and you see the gravestone of Hope Van Dyne, and you're like, okay, so this is where we're leading. And you're thinking that it's going to be Scott. I, honest to God, was not thinking that it was going to be Hank Pym. And in all honesty, like, it happened so fast, like, the next thing you know, you just see it coming. And sure enough, it's Hank Pym in the Yellow Jacket suit. And he shows up to confront Fury and, you know, tells us everything that he did. Like, he lays out everything. That basically, like, Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. are the reason that Hope died. They didn't honor her or, you know, in any kind of way, and he's coming for revenge. And the best way he could get revenge would be to take out whatever Fury's big plan was. So when it came to Tony, remember there was a projectile that burst out? When it gets injected, doesn't inject the serum, it injects Ant-Man, or I guess we'll call him Yellow Jacket because he's in the Yellow Jacket suit, but it injects Hank Pym into Iron Man. He goes into the bloodstream, kills him that way. And then you jump to the moment where Thor gets killed, and sure enough, you see freaking little Hank Pym come in and punch Barton in the hand that makes him release everything. And then he is able to go up and inside his ear so that inside the cell he can kill him from in there, and takes him out by, I'm assuming, something that he must have done probably to his brain. Which then leads us to Banner, where you see that he was flying on the bullet that hits Bruce before he turns into the Hulk, which gets him inside of the Hulk's bloodstream, and from there he finds the Hulk's heart and just enlarges it. And enlarges it to the point that it explodes the Hulk. Like, all genius stuff. Like I said, A.C. Bradley, the ideas that he comes up with for this show are just so in tune to the characters and the MCU, and adapts them in ways that are really, really fun. And then we get to see Nick Fury, like, we've really never seen Nick Fury before. He's out there doing this, like, awesome hand-to-hand combat, man. Like, he's blocking everything that Hank is throwing at him, and then all of a sudden he does this massive, like, flip that, like, seemed not human. And the minute he did it, you're like, oh crap, Loki. Like, it's an illusion. And the next thing you know, sure enough, like, Fury's egging on, you know, Hank the whole time, and then you're starting to see more Furies, and more Furies, and more Furies, and eventually it comes down to where it's like, it's you know, Hank, or it's Fury, and it's, Loki. And with all the Furies running around or whatever, like Hank gets caught up into something, and this a giant Fury shows up, and then this piece of ice just rises and drops down to the ground. And he's like basically unconscious, and that's when Fury and Loki kind of reveal themselves. And right as that's all kind of ending, Fury breaks down what S.H.I.E.L.D. is and what they stand for, and how coming together to achieve the greater good is always the goal. And he's like, and Hope understood that, something that you'll never understand, Hank. And as they're taking Hank away, he's just like, well, if that's true, he's like, just honor her in some way. And I was hoping that we might see that honor, like at the end, like maybe they name something at S.H.I.E.L.D. in honor of her. We don't ever get that beat. As we know, a bunch of these characters will come back by the end of the first season, so there's a possibility that maybe we could see that. But that's all that he's yelling, and as he kind of takes him away, Loki goes, I was thinking about extending my stay on Midgard, and Fury's like, for how long? And boom, Friday pops up, and you're at this it's an announcement of sorts that comes from Loki, where he has he's speaking to like everybody on television that Earth will now has now teamed with Asgard, and Loki will be the ruler as the honorary head from Asgard. Like, he's now going to rule, and he goes into this whole, like, you all crave to be ruled, and that's what I'm gonna do. And you're like, oh, damn. Like, Loki helped Fury out, and now Fury gave him the pathway to the White House, man. Like, you see this, all of the Asgardian guards outside the White House, and you're just like, oh, man, this universe is now gonna be under control of Loki. Like, I want to go see that, man. Like, take me back to that world. And what's interesting, too, and I'll be fascinated to see, is that, like, while you have, Loki basically seemingly ruling Earth, Fury is just in this giant hangar with Coulson, and all the caskets of the fallen, what could have been Avengers that never get to become Avengers, are all there. And Fury, goes on a speech talking about the Avengers, and it's the same one. I think it's the same one, if not very, very similar to the one that you hear at the end of Avengers, as he's kind of wrapping up with the voiceover. Only here, it's hitting in a completely different way, because nothing went right, and all of our heroes are dead. And as that's kind of fading out, you get Uatu comes in, and he's talking about how hope is never dead in the universe, as in any other, if you just keep your good eye on the bigger picture. And obviously, Fury's only got one eye, and we now see Fury down in like a cavern, and it's frozen and it's cold, and you see the shield, and he comes up and he wipes it down like this, and it's like, there's the Cap shield, and he goes, welcome back, Captain, or welcome back, Cap, and you're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden there's like a glow coming from the next, like from the side of him, and camera pans over, and there's Carol Danvers, and all she says is, so where's the next fight? And you're like, oh, I'm about it. Like, you ended up hitting her up anyway, and you're figuring, I'm going to find Captain America, I'm bringing Captain Marvel in. Like, I'm thinking right away that Nick Fury is figuring out a way to now usurp, and stop Loki. Like, that's got to be the next thing for whatever Avengers group he can craft together. And this makes me start to wonder if somehow this Nick Fury is going to figure out that there are multiple universes, and if he is going to, I just got this feeling, like, especially now knowing, like, Captain Carter's coming back, T'Challa as Star-Lord is coming back, like, I feel like we're going to get a multiversal Avengers group, and maybe Nick Fury is going to form them up to stop Loki by the end of all this. Like, that would be really cool, right? Like, inside of What If, you get a new set of Avengers to take on the original Avengers villain in Loki, but also simultaneously, like, if you go that route, how does this story then tie into the overall MCU story? I'm fascinated, but 3 episodes in, I think AC Bradley and his creative team have done a really good job of crafting 3 really rock-solid episodes that are leaving doorways open everywhere. He's got so many options and so many doors that he could go through. He really could take this story anywhere, and I'm so here for it, man, and I cannot wait to see what we get next week. Just trying to think, like, we haven't seen, obviously, the zombie Avengers. We haven't seen what looks in all the trailers to be an evil Doctor Strange yet. We haven't seen Gamora looking like she's the Mad Titan, because she's got, like, the big Thanos sword. And we haven't seen, clean-shaven Thor or Killmonger saving Iron Man. So there's so many options and different stories that we could get. Fascinated to see where we go next week. Will it be a one-off like Zombie Avengers? Will it be... I'm thinking that we might get the Iron Man story where Killmonger saves him. I would love that. But wherever we go, I am so here for all of it. And like I said, even if I don't like an episode as much as I like the others, it doesn't matter, man. Like, they're all really, really good. And like I said, A.C. Bradley's writing is just top-notch. The animation is gorgeous, and I love the fact that you have real actors coming back to voice themselves here, but the actors that you have filling in for other characters are just so spot on that you literally don't even notice. Like, you just sit there and you go, I'm pretty sure that's Liv Tyler. Like, by the end of this episode, I was like, that's Liv Tyler. That's definitely Scarlett Johansson. And it's none of those people. So I think everybody that's just involved in this right now is doing an awesome job, and I cannot wait to see where we go next with What If. But for me, that's all I got, man. So all the spoilers, all the thoughts I have on What If Episode 3. What if the world lost its mightiest heroes? Another solid episode, and I'm starting to now like my brain is starting to drift because of the jackhammering is subconsciously getting to me, so I'm gonna shut up, and now it is your turn. It is the spoiler reviews, so by all means, go nuts in the comments. Let me know what your favorite parts of this episode were, what if there were things that didn't work for you, what were those, what were the biggest surprises. Like I said, like you go into the episode and you know that we're gonna lose the Avengers. I did not see them getting killed in the ways in which they get killed in this episode. So was like the initial one where Tony just slumps over dead, was that the big surprise? Hulk exploding, was that the big surprise? How about Barton just not waking up? Like, what thing popped for you? What did you think of the idea of using Hank Pym as the agent of so-called evil taking out the Avengers Initiative group? Anything you were thinking, man. Good, bad, indifferent. What if... in general, but specifically here, What If Episode 3. All of it down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking about What If on Wednesdays, you want to be here for all that coverage next week. Just like anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer reactions, you want to show a little love and support to this old guy and what he's doing on YouTube and you haven't yet, real easy way to do that. Come join C-Maniac Nation by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts, and until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema, sit down. I've been the C-Man and I'm signing off. Peace. Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.